Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. We're live and national, 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Happy to be here with you. It's a blessing. And our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Stuff we're getting into tonight. Kind of all over the place with the week ending and so many new things coming about. But I want to get into, obviously, the big headlines of the day. I want to get into this story about smuggling fuel because, there's all this talk about human smuggling. There's plenty to talk about there, plenty to talk about drug smuggling. But fuel smuggling is not one of those things that you hear too much about. And at least I didn't hear too much about it. And I was reading something about it that I thought was really, really interesting. So I want to share some of that with you. Also want to get into a couple of things with respect to a couple of various topics, right? Let me see which one I'm going to start with first, just to kind of lay out the agenda for you. But, of course, we're going to do some Open Phone America tonight. You got the number for that, 833-4-Valdez. And in addition to the fuel smuggling, let me see. Hold on. Just bear with me. My scroller thing is not scrolling as quickly as I anticipated. Here we go. Scroll, number 9. Okay, very good. Of course, we're going to talk about Iran. And we're also going to talk about this new development in the legal world, right? This man, Mahmoud Khalil, he's been released. The courts have weighed in and said he was not treated the way he ought to be treated. He's got to go. So that's a big development that we're going to get into. What's the other one here? Oh, yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about some veterans, some heroes, and, of course, the big cyber threat from Iran that a lot of people are interested in or predicting. So those are the big topics for tonight. But this fuel smuggling thing is, again, something I just want to just give you a little bit of. Because apparently they're smuggling fuel from the United States into Mexico. This is spearheaded by the Jalisco cartel. It's called Jalisco New Generation Cartel and other cartels, and they're organizing this, and it's obviously going around and harming national security for both countries. And between 16 and 27% of the fuel that's consumed in Mexico, which is the equivalent to 172,000 or 290,000 barrels a day, that's the range, enters illegally from the U.S. into Mexico, and that generates a profit of between $12 and $21 billion with a B. How about that? I think we're all selling the wrong stuff here. Now, obviously this weakens their economy, but causes some interesting problems. So part of the way they do it is they have trucks that bring the fuel in off of tankers. Really just interesting. Now, the cartels in recent years have evolved towards using a more sophisticated scheme, cross-border smuggling of diesel from the U.S., and the way they do it, truck, train, ship, and they take advantage of very, very weak Mexican import policies and weak customs on the Mexico side. So the Jalisco cartel, along with other groups like the Sinaloa cartel and the Gulf cartel, they refined this operation. They use bribes, coercion, violence to move large volumes of fuel, which is then sold at reduced prices in Mexico's black market. Isn't that something? So in border states like Nuevo León and Zacatecas, the illegal fuel makes up more than 40% of total consumption, at least thus far in this year. Imagine that. Imagine getting a discount on gasoline. Now, I was thinking that they were making so much money because they were buying it here and then reselling it for more, profiting. So I guess they're stealing it here and then selling it because they can make as much profit as they can get since it's stolen. Very, very interesting stuff here. Anyway, this thing is generating hundreds of millions of dollars, which they say eventually goes into the billions. Their MO is a little bit complex, but the cartels steal the crude oil directly from Pemex pipes, the pipelines. They bribe the employees there or tap directly into the pipelines clandestinely. Then the fuel is transported to the border, especially into Tamaulipas, Mexico, where you've got the leader there, Cesar Morfin. They call him El Primito, controlling the crossings into Texas. Once inside the U.S., the crude is falsely labeled as used oil or petroleum waste to avoid customs inspections, according to an Office of Foreign Assets Control report, OFAC. How about that, right? Did you know any of that? I didn't know any of that. Now, the smuggling wouldn't work without this complicated network that they have, including front companies and many corrupt officials. This is a report, by the way, in gatewayhispanic.com. In Mexico, companies like Servicios Logísticos and Ambientales and Grupo Jaya Logística have been sanctioned by the OFAC for their alleged involvement in stolen fuel funding. Anyway, bottom line here is this is how they're doing it, and they're gaining market share this year. Taking stuff out of the country. So right. So while we're so concerned with things coming in, they're concerned with taking things out. Fascinating stuff. So I wanted to put this on your radar because over the next week or so, I'm going to explore a little bit of what this looks like, as well as what else are they taking out of the United States and importing into Mexico, circumventing tariffs and whatnot. Plenty there to discuss. A couple other things I want to get into. Today will be the official first day of summer at 10:42 p.m. Eastern Time. That is 90 minutes from now, and can't wait. Actually, 88 minutes from now. Federal judge ordering the release of Mahmoud Khalil. We're going to get into that. Federal judge blocking the Trump administration in their efforts to ban Harvard from enrolling international students. What else do we have here? There was a plot to kidnap the mayor of Memphis, Tennessee. Now, I say this tongue-in-cheek. Maybe they should have. No, I'm kidding. Very high crime area, Memphis, Tennessee. They need to do a better job. Let's see what else we got here. Appeals court rules that the law requiring the 10 Commandments in classrooms is unconstitutional. Oh, boy. I want to get into that, too. And what else do we have here? Oh, boy. Oh, man. A man in Florida broke into a home and cooks dinner at the home he broke into to avoid going home to his own angry wife. Isn't that something? Anyway, there's plenty more I want to get into. A little bit of a slow start for me because I was really catching up on this one article, which is about the fuel smuggling, which really caught my eye. But there's a lot to talk about. So far, Iran is vowing to continue bombing Israeli civilians. No break in sight there. They had a strike on Haifa. It hit the historic mosque, injuring some imams, and just a lot. So we're going to get into all of that stuff. Keep it locked with me here. We're live, we're national, and we're just getting started. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
we also know today, European leaders met with Iranian diplomats in Geneva. This in an attempt to reach diplomatic resolution after what would prevent Iran from developing its nuclear weapons program. After the meeting, though, European officials said that there were no major breakthroughs in this discussion. But this left many people wondering, what are the current capabilities, weapon capabilities of both of these countries there in the region? And to talk a lot more about this, I want to bring into the conversation with the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Tom Caraco. Tom, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. Let's just start with the very basics. We know that Israel's official stance and ambiguity regarding its nuclear program. What about the organization? Why is this the case? And what do we at this point know about their capabilities?
So you're right. This is a continuing coverage of this because the missiles from Iran just keep coming. I'll say two important categories of capabilities here on the Israeli side. You kind of alluded to their nuclear program. I don't think anybody either expects or hopes that they're going to be reaching for those things anytime soon. This is, of course, about keeping the Iranians from getting a nuclear weapon. And I'll just say that there's lots of other countries in the Middle East, the Saudis, lots of other GCC countries that share that common goal. But the other set of capabilities that's so important here, because the missiles keep coming from Iran, is Israel's missile defense capabilities. And so there's been these barrages, these salvos, often at night. Perhaps there may be some others in the coming hours or days. But here's the problem. That Israel has this multi-layered defense capability, Iron Dome, David Sling, the Arrow family, but it's really only the latter, the arrows, that are capable of and really designed for anyway, going after the higher end threats that are coming these long distances. It's conceivable that perhaps they might take a shot with these others, but it's really the latter that is designed for this. And that's a challenge because Iran has thousands of missiles. Hopefully, many of those are being destroyed on the ground, the launchers being degraded or destroyed on the ground. But there are a finite number of missile defense interceptors. And the longer this goes on, the more the capacity problem for the missile defense interceptors becomes kind of spookily low.
One of those Iranian missiles hit a mosque in Haifa. So you now have the Iranians hitting mosques and injuring imams. Shortly after sunrise, Iran launched a barrage of 20 to 30 missiles in 3 waves, according to Israel's army radio. And the sirens sounded in the north and then throughout the entire country. Most of the missiles were intercepted by Israel's air defense Iron Dome. But the missile that hit the port city of Haifa, where Arabs and Jews live side by side, was the only one that caused any injuries on the ground. It turns out that the damage to one of the buildings was the Al Jarina Mosque, one of the most important Muslim houses of worship in that city. Now, Muslim clerics or imams were in the mosque, presumably ahead of the weekly Jummah services that are held on Fridays. Israel's foreign minister, Gideon Sa'ar, condemned the attack on civilian centers and said that religious buildings in particular are war crimes. And that's what the Iranian regime is doing, targeting religious centers and civilian centers, and they are guilty of war crimes. He put a tweet out saying the Iranian regime launched a missile attack on Haifa and struck the Al Jarina Mosque in the Wadi Nisnas neighborhood. The missile attack injured Muslim clerics who were in the mosque. The Iranian regime is targeting Muslim, Christian, and Jewish civilians, as well as other civilians, and are guilty of war crimes. And that's what's going on there. Now you've also got, and I'm looking at some photos of the damage reported here by Breitbart News. And according to an Islamic cultural website, Al Jarina Mosque and the Al Nasser Mosque, or the Great Mosque of Haifa, is an ancient mosque dating back to the Ottoman era in Palestine. It's located in the old city of Haifa. It's the second oldest mosque in Haifa after the small mosque. And neither Iran nor its terrorist proxies, like Hamas and Hezbollah, distinguish between Jews and Arabs when they're firing these rockets. They go for people. And that's the most interesting thing, right? You're hitting your own people, right? This is supposed to be some sort of war based on theology, right? It's the theocratic regime, but they're going after either their bad aim or they're going after the wrong people, or they don't care who they go after as long as they're hurting somebody. I would, chalk this up to they're going to say it's collateral damage and they didn't expect, to hit an ancient mosque. But I mean, come on, get it in gear, guys. If you're going to send 30 missiles, you have to know that one of them could potentially hit your houses of worship. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why they would want to do that. Like, what's good with that? Anyway, so that's the scoop on that. Let me see. What else did I want to cover here? Oh, yeah. There's a bunch of news on the immigration front. I'm going to get to that. And I want to spend a little time talking about this big bust. There was a big bust of a bunch of kids that were rescued. We had some audio from yesterday that I wanted to play for you. I think it was from the day before from CBS News. And big case. And Dan Bongino, when he was on with Maria Bartiromo not that long ago, he alluded to the fact that there would be a strong focus in looking for people that were messing around with kids. And he made it very clear, this is not going to be a good thing for you. Listen to this.
We that knock at the door, it's on Amazon, and that's going to be us. This is a huge job. And Maria, not only does it destroy innocence, I said to everyone in the room, say week 2 or 3, when Cash and I put Restoring Justice together to go get these mutts off the street, these kiddie pornographers and these animals, right? I said to everyone in the room, I said, you know why it's going to matter to America? Because everyone in the room is a child or a parent, right? There's no immaculate conceptions here, right? I love Jesus, but there's no one in the room, right? I said, this matters. And not only that, it creates generational crime because abused kids then become abusers in a lot of these cases. I said, we have a chance right now. I said, we got to go make their lives painful, these bad guys. And we went and we locked up in a month, 400? We saved 115 kids. And you haven't even seen the beginning because those 400, a lot of them are talking. And when you log onto that network next, you have no idea what we're doing. You think you're safe in your dark web? I promise you are absolutely not safe. You have no idea what we can do.
That was a month ago on May 18th, Deputy Director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, telling the Fox News Channel that this summer is not going to be good if you're a child abuser in America. Well, here we are a month later, and that was the mention the operation he just talked about. Well, they launched another operation after that called Operation Soteria Shield. And this operation yielded 109 rescued children. So we'll get into that in a little bit because it was a month-long investigation by federal and local law enforcement. These crimes, including trafficking and other things regarding abuse of children, the number of offenders arrested and the children rescued in this operation are stunning, is a quote from Jay Combs, the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Texas. And I agree with that. 109 children rescued is a great day's work anywhere you work. So kudos to them and God bless them. So anyway, we will continue with that straight ahead, as well as talking about what's going on with Mahmoud Khalil, Secretary Rubio, saying he's a threat to what's going on. We're going to revoke his papers. The court's weighing in saying, nope, not so fast. I want to know what's going on. We're going to check in with Alex Swoyer from the Washington Times straight ahead to help us make sense of it. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
God bless you, because literally I think you represent, the new voice of America. What you say is what people are listening to.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And we have a report that we're going to play. Mr. Good, whenever you're ready. Case we're talking about right now is the case of Mahmoud Khalil. Mr. Khalil today was ordered by a judge to be released at the judge's discretion I do have a clip from that. I hear it's ready. Listen to this.
A judge just ordered the Trump administration to release Mahmoud Khalil on bail. The ruling would end a 3-month detention for the former Columbia University grad student. Khalil is a legal permanent U.S. resident and a new father who played a leading role in anti-Gaza war demonstrations on the Columbia campus last year. Joining us now, MSNBC.
So that is the update on that. And I want to get some feedback from that, some analysis on that from our guest, Alex Swoyer. She's an attorney and the legal affairs reporter for the Washington Times. She's also the author of the book, Lawless Lawfare, Tipping the Scales of Justice to Get Trump and Destroy MAGA. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But right now, I want to get the scoop on what is going on with this particular case. Alex Swoyer, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. So this is the case here where Secretary Rubio said that he used a foreign exception to I guess, suspend this person's...
Right.
Yeah,
visa,
well, you walk us through it. You're the lawyer.
Card. Yeah, so one of the things that stands out to me is there's a part of the Immigration and Nationality Act that the Secretary of State has invoked to basically detain Khalil and take away his permanent status. I believe he's a green card holder. Mm-hmm. And the reason for doing so is citing that he's a foreign policy risk. He's a risk to foreign policy, right? And that reasoning, I think it was the Washington Post actually had an interesting article on this, has only really been used, I think, in the past few decades about 15 times, and only successfully like a couple. And it typically involves someone who has been accused of like a violent crime or another country that has requested that person be extradited, for example. Yeah. So this is one of those issues that really is new to the courts. Like it could go all the way up and be tested. It's a bit unprecedented. The issue, I think, here for the administration is exactly how is he a foreign policy risk? You know, is there evidence connecting some of his protest materials? Is he being funded by Hamas? Is there any sort of direct correlation there? Which I haven't seen any of the pleadings. I don't know if that's true. I think that there's also something to be said about the immigration judge that's handling his case in Louisiana did find reason to hold him. So there's this issue of what Marco Rubio has raised, the foreign policy risk. But there's also an issue apparently with his application, the government saying that he had misled on his application into the United States. So that could very well be another reason, a separate reason for him to be deported. And it looks like the judge in Louisiana, the immigration judge, was willing to detain him. He went ahead and filed a habeas petition, which basically challenges detention. Right. And he did so in federal court in New Jersey. And that's the judge you're referencing, just making the decision to release him. And that was a Biden appointee. And basically in two separate decisions said that, didn't buy the government's argument from from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, that there was a foreign policy risk, and also thought that the application issue wasn't enough to detain him, that he wasn't a flight risk, there was no violence committed by him, so he can be released. Now, the government says that they will appeal. That will go to the Third Circuit, and it'll depend on the panel of judges that are handed, there. It's a pretty split circuit, 6, I think, GOP appointees, 6 Democratic appointees, and sometimes with these types of politically charged cases, it depends the judges you get. Right.
And this is, I think, part of where we land with these things, right? Kind of like what your book is about, where this judge, oftentimes some judges, I think, are trying to operate from a legally sound perspective, while many, I think, when it comes to Trump, they're not. They just simply go for the biggest leap they could find and just rule in the other direction just because they're trying to score political points or to slow Trump down. Does this look like that to you, or does this look like there really is some solid legal reasoning here?
Yeah, I think that there's the issue of forum shopping, which I talk about in my book, and so lawyers are very strategic about where they bring these challenges, which judges they're going to get, and I think that's probably what I think that this Khalil is being represented by the ACLU, if I'm not mistaken, very savvy, smart lawyers who know where to bring these types of challenges and get favorable rulings, at least at the start. And that's something I explore in Lawless Lawfare. And it is a problem, and that's exactly what we saw Democrats do when they were going after President Trump and also his inner circle, some of his supporters. They would look towards a favorable venue where they think they're going to get their initial wins. And you talked about judges kind of skirting the law. One of the most egregious examples, I think, was the Manhattan judge, Judge Merchan, in the hush money trial. There was just obvious conflicts of interest there. And even just the way he conducted the trial, how he allowed the gag order to remain in place for President Trump while allowing key witnesses like Cohen, Stormy Daniels to continue to go out and do press at the time of the trial. Very prejudicial to a defendant. One of the things I highlight in the book, actually, if you care about the First Amendment, which is extremely troubling, is that President Trump did about 90 campaign rallies while under these gag orders from criminal courts. I think there was like 4 different ones. And it's just, the idea of political speech in our country is given heightened protection under the First Amendment. And we want that free exchange of ideas. If anyone in our country should have the ability to speak out and defend oneself, it's a defendant in a criminal proceeding. And the fact that he was gagged during that period is just extremely disheartening and made us like a third world country.
And, Alex, this is the argument that the left is making with respect to Mahmoud Khalil, saying that he was simply operating from a position of First Amendment rights, even though he was inciting riots that led to, in one case at Columbia, the actual hostage taking of one of the janitors, and someone else.
This is true. That's an example of violence. Right. And that would be an example of violence that the government could use to support in their appeal that he needs to be detained, that he should not be released. I think there was also some record that the school even looked at suspending him over his actions. And that also, I think, would come into play that, it wasn't just the Trump administration can say, it wasn't just the federal government looking at this saying that there could be security concerns with this individual, but also the school.
Do you believe that the outcome of this will eventually have maybe a different outcome with the immigration folks, trying to adjudicate him maybe through an immigration court and get a deportation? Because that seems to be the strategy that they're using with a lot of these criminal aliens. They're choosing not to go through criminal court and just go through immigration court so they can have the result of deporting them and move the process along that much quicker.
And that could be true, and maybe that might be the best route for these cases to go is through the judges who are used to handling these types of cases. It's just that this administration is having to get extremely creative with the ways that they can go about accomplishing their immigration goals. And one of the reasons is because you see, and you mentioned, just the sheer number of nationwide injunctions we're seeing from some of these Biden and Obama appointees that are being handed down, trying to block various policies, whether it's immigration related or even just the deportation of Venezuelan gang members we've seen. So I think that this is something that could work its way up. The free speech arguments are something that, courts like to take a look at. I could definitely see the ACLU wanting to take that all the way up on appeal if it comes to that. So I think that this case isn't going away. This Khalil might be out right now, but the legal issues I think are going to continue to play out both in the immigration court as well as in the federal court system.
Amigos, Alex Swoyer is an attorney and the Washington Times legal affairs reporter. She's the author of Lawless Lawfare, Tipping the Scales of Justice to Get Trump and Destroy MAGA. We're going to talk about the book and the premise of it when we return. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation with Alex Swoyer. She's a Washington Times legal reporter and the author of the book Lawless Lawfare, Tipping the Scales of Justice to Get Trump and Destroy MAGA. Alex, what made you write the book?
Covering all these cases during the election really troubled me as a lawyer, as a reporter. I have a group of law school friends. Not everyone is necessarily a Trump supporter, but we all thought that the cases were just egregious and the charges. It was just very troubling and threatened our separation of powers, really. We don't want the judiciary to look like one of the political branches, and unfortunately, That's what it's become. Some of the interesting things I found from the book, and some people have asked me, like, what was the biggest problem? Well, the media, the coverage is a big problem. Just for example, looking at the Georgia case with Fani Willis, if you recall, I think Media Research Center had a report out in April looking at that case. It had to deal with the election fraud, racketeering charges against President Trump and his ally, like I think 18 different defendants. Well, in April of 2024, CBS and ABC did, I think it was 99 stories on this case that never saw trial, but the charges, and never once identified Fani Willis, the district attorney bringing the charges, as a Democrat. Why is that important? She was running for re-election. So, I mean, she's literally running for re-election, and the reporters aren't mentioning that she's running as a Democrat while prosecuting the leading, Republican presidential candidate. And those types of examples were present with Alvin Bragg in New York, Letitia James in New York, you name it. It was unfortunate to see the media coverage. And I think it goes beyond being, erroneous or not understanding the law. And there just seems to be this narrative. I talked to Laura Trump and Don Jr. for the book. They were very interesting. Both basically told me that they saw it that Trump had to win in order to stay out of jail. They firmly believed that had he not won, that the Democrats would have, locked him up. It was just, Laura Trump said that, the whole family was affected by the whole lawfare, that it was almost too raw to even go into details about. But she said even like the ability to get a loan. And we all think of the Trump family as one of the wealthiest families in America. So, that was surprising.
Yeah.
It's just extremely troubling. If you care about the judiciary, if you want the courts and justice to be blind, we clearly saw it was not against one of the most powerful men, the most powerful man on earth.
Yeah, 100%. Amigos, we're on with Alex Swoyer. She's an attorney and the Washington Times legal affairs reporter. She's the author of the book Lawless Lawfare, Tipping the Scales of Justice to Get Trump and Destroy MAGA. And I, for one, I can tell you as somebody that, all cards on the table, I'm very supportive of President Trump's administration and his policies. But moreover, I'm happy with the action being taken. I realize it's not easy to move forward in a lot of these directions, putting the right people in the right offices, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, et cetera, Dan Bongino, all good things. And I think trying to take the appropriate steps to ensure that lawfare doesn't continue. But there's a lot more than just putting the right people in place. What's your take on preventing lawfare in the future so that these types of things never happen again?
So I spoke to House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan about that. And one area that he mentioned was that they have a bill that they're looking at to allow people like, a politician, for example, to move a state case to federal court. That might give them more of an advantage. We saw with Trump, there was clearly bias in the Manhattan
in the venues,
court system, right, in the venues. And so that might be one way. Other people had suggested potentially having a presidential commission, even a bipartisan one, assembled, taking a look at some changes that could be made to ensure this doesn't happen again. Lawfare isn't necessarily something that's new, right? Like we've seen it in the past. It's just been such an explosion with Trump and the Trump era. And Ken Paxton, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, told me he believes it was because of how effective Trump is, and that's why it just, it just exploded. And a lot of people focus on Trump. They focus on the inner circle, which I talk about in the book. But there's also some other cases I've highlighted, like a group out in Texas that were counter-protesting a Biden bus event. And Democrats and Big Law came after them, basically said that they violated the Ku Klux Klan Act. They were interfering with the right to vote, and this wasn't even on Election Day or anything. But, they had to go to trial for that. They ended up winning, but it cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
And this is just your everyday, Trump supporters that went out and counter-protested a Biden campaign event.
And this is the strategy that the left uses to try to just stifle people.
You're exactly right. The strategy is to silence and to bankrupt. And, it didn't work with President Trump. The people saw through it in November.
Alex Swoyer, your book is Lawless Lawfare, Tipping the Scales of Justice to Get Trump and Destroy MAGA. Take a moment and let everybody know quickly where you can be found and where they can get a copy of the book.
So they can find the book at Amazon or on Barnes & Noble website, and it just came out this week. You can also find more about me at thewashingtontimes.com, where I report daily covering the courts, and especially the Supreme Court, which we have some major decisions coming up next week, I believe.
Outstanding. Alex Swoyer, I want to thank you for joining us. I appreciate your analysis and wish you the best weekend ever.
Thank you.
You bet. Godspeed to you. And amigos, your calls, thoughts, and reactions this Friday night. We're live and national, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. El Macho, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Friday night. We're live, we're national. Here's the phone number if you want to join us on our late-night national town hall conversation. Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And we've talked about a couple of things about smuggling fuel from the United States into Mexico. That's what the Jalisco cartel is doing in their latest effort to defy national security norms in the United States. We also have summer beginning in about a half hour officially. Summer begins at 10:42 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's nice. It was actually a very nice day. Felt like summer out there today, yesterday too. So kudos to God and Mother Nature and everybody else that's part of the vernal equinox. And what else we got here? Federal judge releasing Mahmoud Khalil, the dude that incited the violence and the riot that led to hostage taking of a Dominican janitor in the Columbia University Morningside Heights campus in New York City. And we'll see if he actually is released and how long he's released for. I understand the Trump administration is making moves to get him detained on other immigration-related issues so that he is not permanently out. So I'll keep you up to speed as we get more on that. And, of course, I had mentioned earlier, and I believe yesterday, alluded to this big story. On Tuesday was announced by multiple law enforcement agencies that Operation Soteria Shield was successful in rescuing 109 children that were being held in, captivity for trafficking, for pornography, for other exploitative purposes. And 244 people were arrested in Operation Soteria Shield. I got a report here from CBS News. Check this out.
Authorities are calling it a successful roundup of alleged child sex offenders, but it also shows how widespread that crime is in North Texas. The Dallas FBI office, along with some of the 70 law enforcement agencies that all participated, announced the results of what they called Operation Soteria Shield. Here's our J.D. Miles.
These are the faces of the 244 men and women charged with exploiting children for the purpose of sex trafficking or pornography. It's the end of a month-long investigation by federal and local law enforcement of a crime that authorities say is a year-round problem.
The numbers of offenders arrested and the children rescued in this operation are stunning. It's stunning to hear them repeated here.
109 children were rescued by Operation Soteria Shield, which began in April.
During this operation, many of the children recognized or rescued were previously unidentified. They had never been reported missing. They had never had their abuse known to authorities.
The operation not only led to arrests and rescues, but also to the seizure of terabytes of child abuse sex material through a collaborative effort that started 10 years ago and now includes 70 Texas law enforcement agencies.
What started as a small team with a bold idea has grown into something very powerful.
In a lot of these cases, authorities say the sex offenders never actually meet their victims face to face, but instead use technology to coerce them into sending explicit images and videos. The head of the Dallas FBI office says the methods used are not just involving social media, but also online gaming systems.
So I think for many of us, I'll speak for my generation, we were raised to be concerned about faceless strangers that might try to contact us or cause us harm on the street. But we've moved past that. Again, predators have access to our children in our home through technology.
Authorities urge families to use parental controls on any devices kids use and be aware there are more faces like these still out there.
Unbelievable to think that there are people that are actively out there looking to harm your children, to steal your children, to corrupt them and coerce them. And I count myself amongst the ignorant. I really do. I remember every year around September time, my mother would watch us watch the movie Adam, which was, one of those after-school special type of movies that used to come on broadcast TV in the 80s that was about, if I'm not mistaken, the son of the star of America's Most Wanted, Adam Walsh. And it was, I can't tell you that I really watched the whole thing, but she was trying to let us know, hey, you got to keep your eyes open. And at the time, it was kind of like, make sure you don't do something stupid so you don't end up on the back of a milk carton, because that was where they put the faces of missing children at the time. And something we don't do anymore. I don't know if it's because we don't use milk cartons as much or we don't have a focus on that. But the point that I'm making is that it's remarkable to me to think that back in the days, the argument was, oh, they're missing children, right? That was the term, missing children. And missing children, as they got older, they'd say, well, some of them are teenagers, they're runaways, they just don't want to be with their family, and they end up strung out on drugs, and people would justify why people go missing, and it wasn't until, you find people that escape from this lifestyle, that write books and do interviews and stuff like that, and as the information age came in the 2000s and whatnot, you start to find out more what really happens in these things. And to my chagrin, to my surprise as well, this is not, people that are upset with their parents imposing curfews on them and leaving. These are people that are stolen. They are robbed. They're kidnapped. And they're beaten and they're held in captivity. And they're groomed from an early age when they're originally abducted to do whatever they do. And, one of the interviews I did on this program some years ago, I bring it up all the time because it really was... the word in Spanish is impresionante. It really impressed upon me the story, the gravity of it. This man, who was a fundraiser for the Democrat Party in California, when he was a child, at 4 years old, he was abducted away from his family and trafficked to what he called, his words, a pedophile ranch where he stayed for 12 years as a sex slave. And men who engaged in pedophilia would go there and pick out the boy or boys that they wanted to do their illicit deeds with and pay the ranch owners, and they would do their thing. And at 16 years old, he escaped and didn't immediately find his family, but he did escape and found the anti-immigration produce union guy, Cesar Chavez. And Cesar Chavez took him under the wing and taught him the game of organizing, of, union work and all of that stuff. And he went on to go to law school and become a lawyer and an activist with the Democrats and whatnot. That part is, very secondary to the main story, which is he didn't end up killing himself because he was considering that. He did get away from the abuse, and he lives to tell that story. And he wrote a book about it, and we interviewed him about the book. And it was, and maybe I'll bring him on again. It was a very, very touching story. And I have to tell you that after hearing that, it opened my eyes. And then, we speak with other people that have come on this show who've talked about being trafficked as a child. And they were sold by members of their own family into this, being trafficked by your family. Just imagine that. And all of that is very heavy, right? It's a heavy topic, but it's real. So now when you hear about missing kids or kids being exploited, now they're being drugged, they're being beaten, they're being held in captivity. They're, kept in these basement dungeons to get them to submit to the will of their captor, to do whatever it is, to make videos that they could send overseas, to make pornography, to do pedophile ranch type of activity. Just disgusting stuff, and stuff that most good, normal people don't think about until you hear about it. And then you're like, wow, that's really a thing? Holy, And that's really where I stood on that. So when I say that, I was ignorant on this, I truly was. We've spoken with a lot of people on this program, Andy Berger, Jacobuyan, so many. And just remarkable stories all around of people that have survived this trafficking stuff. So when you hear about 109 kids being rescued, amen, praise God, hallelujah. That's a great thing. And that 244 of these traffickers were arrested. Again, kudos to the law enforcement officers that made that happen. Very important stuff. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about something that's important to me, right? My brother was a Marine, so I love to talk about Marines. But overall, there's a lot of veterans out there that deal with brain injury, TBI to be precise, traumatic brain injury. And my dad had a traumatic brain injury, and it changed his life. And as his primary caregiver for a number of years, I learned a lot about traumatic brain injuries and how they work and the type of challenges you face emotionally, physically, with someone that's dealing with that. So I want to talk a little bit about that because our men and women in uniform deserve for us to understand what they're going through. And it's not lost on me that the Houthi rebels were blasting and blasting and blasting hundreds and if not thousands of rockets over the last couple of years, hitting our troops, hitting our bases, men and women on bases, causing thousands and thousands of these types of brain injuries. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about that and talking about how they can get from trauma to joy. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if the viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Through the Evolve study, we have really, come to appreciate how tough our servicemen and women are. They just keep getting up. They just keep fighting. And for them, a lot of times, the battle that they leave in combat is only the beginning. The study itself actually compares service members that deployed to combat without head injuries to service members with head injuries that were sustained in combat. We actually have service members in our study in all 50 states, 2 U.S. territories, and then it bounces between 9 and 11, sometimes down to 7 countries on any given year.
14 years into the study, researchers are finding that mild traumatic brain injuries have a lasting impact on many combat veterans.
Those who have even these considered mild traumatic brain injuries, they are more likely, unfortunately, to have long-term impact. This is really important and is actually in contrast to historical data that would have suggested these injuries largely resolve in 3 to 6 months, and that people after that are in pretty good shape. What we have found, unfortunately, is a large proportion of them actually have continued symptoms, and not just specific symptoms, but things that evolve over time.
So that's a little update on what's going on with traumatic brain injuries and head injuries that our men and women in uniform are suffering from. And I want to get some reaction to that from Michael McNamara. He's the founder of the Post-Traumatic Winning Company. He also hosts a podcast called All Marine Radio. He's retired from the United States Marine Corps, and he's the author of the book From Trauma to Joy, Life-Changing Lessons That Fellow U.S. Marines Taught Me After Traumatic Events Occurred in My Life, Lessons That Apply to Anyone. Michael McNamara, welcome, sir.
Well, Rich, I've been listening for the last hour, and I have to tell you, man, I give dating advice, right? Steering people towards the trades. I love your show, man. It's awesome.
Well, thank you, brother. We try to cover it all here in Late Night Radio Land, and I want to thank you for your service. My brother is a Marine, and I have a lot of respect for people that serve in uniform. What got you to start this organization, the Post-Traumatic Winning Company, and to do the work that you're doing?
Well, my life experiences, both in uniform and out of uniform, I couldn't get away from trauma in my life. My parents separated and divorced when I was 19. They never spoke again. I joined the Marine Corps. A helicopter crashes about 75 yards from me. I'm a commanding officer running an exercise, and the pilot's decapitated, and we're trying to save the 3 Marines in the back, and everybody dies. 3 years after that, the worst thing I've ever seen happen, and that was my sister, her husband murdered their 2 kids when she said she wanted a divorce, beat her and then killed himself. I went to Iraq and Afghanistan 3 different times, all as I'm an infantry officer, and all during the heights of the fighting. So I did that. I came home and I got divorced, and then one of my 2 younger sisters froze to death as a result of alcohol poisoning and cold weather. And so I couldn't get away from this stuff. And then at about 2015, our involvement in wars had wound down for the most part, but our suicide kept going up and up and up. And so on my podcast, I wanted to talk about mental health, but I know, like your brother, Marine, right? He's never going to listen to that. So because they're Marines, you can trick them. And that's what I would do, right? And I would say, hey, we're going to talk to Sergeant Major Valdez. He's coming on today. He was a squad leader in 2004 during the Battle of Fallujah. And, and those interviews are awesome. But 2/3 of the way through, I would ask him, what happened when you came home? And I would hear a story that sounded like this. Well, this stuff started when I was a kid. I grew up in bad circumstances, and so I had a bunch of this when I joined. It was the reason I joined. I was trying to get to a better place. And I came in, I got married, my wife and I were struggling, and then she left me, took our kids. I was alone. I started drinking. I didn't talk about it. 3 times I had a gun on the table in front of me. Once it was in my mouth. And I heard a variation of that story over and over and over again. And so as a leader, it helped me so much. I thought, I've got to teach people what I know works, the things I hear over and over and over again. And in 2019, I started speaking. And from the very first day I ever did this, I walk out on stage. I'm nervous because this is all me, right? And I look at about 1,200 Marines at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and I said, my name's Mac. I'm a retired infantry officer. I'm here to tell you how to live a great life after you go through really, really traumatic things. And I don't care what the traumatic thing is. I don't care if it happened to you as a kid or you went to war, right? And if you guys don't like it, I don't care. And it blew up in my face in the most amazing way possible. And I would tell them true things like this. One, you're never going to get over the things that traumatize you, right? And people hear that and they're shocked. And then they think about it and they laugh and they're like, well, how could I, right? How could I get over that? But I got that advice the day of that helicopter crash after I saw one guy decapitated and 3 other guys, lose the fight for their lives. And the whole thought is this. It's quintessentially Marine. Truth right in your face. You're not going to get over this, sir. From one of my senior Marines who got this from Vietnam guys. Next, when you struggle, you know what that makes you? What? A normal human being, right? You can't get through, nobody gets to the car wash without getting wet. And Rich, I'm sure you have your own versions of it. And what I try to tell combat veterans is,
you know what? Hold on to that piece of advice, Michael, because I don't want people to miss it. And we got to take a pause right here. Folks, we're coming right back with Michael McNamara. He's the author of From Trauma to Joy, Life-Changing Lessons That Fellow U.S. Marines Taught Me After Traumatic Events Occurred in My Life. Lessons that apply to anyone. And we're going to get to learning more about his book and his organization straight ahead with Michael McNamara and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
In 2011, Chuck Rotenberry was a Marine on patrol in Afghanistan when an improvised landmine detonated a few feet away.
Which sent me down a hill 20, 30 feet, knocked me out, caused catastrophic injuries to the Marine behind me and the Marine behind him.
It was Rotenberry's second combat tour after Iraq. What happened to the Marine behind you who had stepped on the IED?
He lost both his legs above the knee.
You and the medic put the tourniquets on him?
Yes, sir.
You saved his life?
I helped out, yeah.
When Rotenberry came home from his 7-month deployment, his wife Liz was pregnant with their 4th child. Chuck was suffering with a brain injury from a concussion and PTSD.
Chuck was struggling to just be in the house because he was dealing with so many emotions, mentally and physically. He was hiding in, back rooms, and I'd find him crying, and he didn't understand why he was crying.
I didn't know whether I was coming or going.
Chuck kept a video diary as he dealt with self-isolation, anxiety, depression, and denial.
1 second I'm up super high, and the next I'm not.
Chuck, who was that man who came home?
In my head, it was me. But I was very far from it, I think.
That a clip from 60 Minutes with Scott Pelley, and very, very telling, right? The reality is there's a lot that goes on with people that are dealing with the post-traumatic stress and the disorder related to that stress from many things in life, let alone serving in war and observing your colleagues being killed, and so much of what goes on in warfare, and really what goes on in many people's day-to-day lives, irrespective of being in warfare. And I think that's exactly why our guest does what he does in this organization, the Post-Traumatic Winning Company. Michael McNamara is the author of the book, From Trauma to Joy, and he joins us to tell us more about the book. Michael, where we left off, you were telling us about how everybody has their own way of dealing with post-traumatic stress. Let's continue from there.
Well, what I learned was that you're not going to get over it. And so when you struggle, that's just it's normal. I have a saying, nobody gets to the car wash without getting wet, and I would say, Rich, you have your own version of things you've been through in your life. Your brother probably does the same, and your wife the same, right? And so we all go through it, right? What I want people to know, it's not a death sentence. You can still live a great life. And those are the things that I learned. And so the book is a blueprint. It's not some broad discussion of resilience or PTSD. It is, how do I change my life? What do I do when life shoves me into the valley of the shadow of death, right? It's a strange world and I'm dealing with things that I don't understand. What do I do? What do I need to understand? What can I do? And so the book is about transformation. The way the nation deals with this is we'll medicate you and you can go to therapy forever. And the nation just set a suicide record, right? The DOD is setting suicide records and we're nowhere near a conflict. And so my message to people is the first place you should look for an answer is inside of you, because that's where it is. Most of us, we don't have serious mental illnesses. 95% of us in the country don't. Right? So you mean to tell me that as a Marine, we can win on Iwo Jima, we can win in all the battles we've won in our history, but we can't win in the Valley of the Shadow of Death? I refuse to believe that. And then what I found is a path that leads you to transformation, and that is, what do? You understand it better, okay? You understand that you're not unique. When you struggle, guess what you should do? Instead of faking it and isolating, how about you talk to one of your good friends who won't judge you? How about you do that and watch how quickly you'll change the way you feel? And this is Marine Corps stuff, right? So when you struggle, quit drinking. Stupid, right? Marine Corps, right? When you're struggling, what's the first thing we're going to go do? We're going to go out and we're going to go get drunk.
Cope.
Well, that'll make it better, right? But again, I found out as I broadened my audience to anybody that everybody tends to do that. And so we numb ourselves. The numbing agent could be work, could be parenting, could be gaming, right? It could be fitness. But so we tend to isolate ourselves, numb ourselves, and fake like we're okay. And I'm going to tell you, that's a path to a bad place. But most people do it because they don't know a better way. And so the book is about a better way. And the better way is to be disciplined in the way you live your life, right? When I struggle, I go for a walk. I stay physically active because my brain needs that, right? I talk about it and I stay away from alcohol. If you'll do that, you'll change your life, and not in 7 weeks. You'll change your life today. And then you have to learn how to meditate. Now, as Marines, we hate that word, right? It's not really cool with our identity, so I call it calming my brain down. We learn how to do those things, how to use breathing to interrupt anger and anxiety. And you learn this. And Rich, I'm going to tell you, you're going to see your life change in a crazy way. And then if you'll just have a daily basic routine and you'll do these things every day, every week you get better. But the magical piece of it, the transformational piece that I learned from the mother of a Marine, is and your life's going to change. And so when you see somebody else struggling, a natural inclination is going to be, hey man, can I talk to you? You know there's nothing wrong with you, right? You know that everything you're doing is normal after you've been through what you just told me you went through.
Right.
Right? And that is his father beating him every day, right? And there's nothing wrong with you. You can still live a great life. And then if you do that kind of stuff, if you stick your hand into their darkness, at some point one of them is going to call you and say, remember that phone conversation we had 2 months ago? Yeah. Well, you don't know this, but I was getting ready to kill myself that night. And you saved my life, man. Thank you. And that is the trip from trauma to joy. We all go through it.
Yeah.
The book is a blueprint on how to live a great life, how to do it. If you just want to talk about it, don't read my book. It ain't for you. But if you want to do it, and then, right, if you're a Christian or if you believe in any faith, helping your fellow man, turning your suffering into something that helps other people, that's the drug you need to get on, right? That's the drug you need to get on. And everybody can do it. The book has 24 stories of people that I've met, and they come from any walk of life. Their trauma ranges from child abuse to going to war, right? And the conclusion I want people to come to is this. If all those people can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah. Michael McNamara is the author and founder of the Post-Traumatic Winning Company. And his book, From Trauma to Joy, is available on Amazon. Michael, let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with you online. What's the website and what's the social media handle?
Well, I'll tell you what, you can find all of that if you just do a search on From Trauma to Joy or posttraumaticwinning.com. You'll see podcasts, you'll see interviews, and you can find all that information there. But there's a path for you.
There's a path for you. Michael McNamara, I want to thank you for being here. Check out his book, From Trauma to Joy, Life Lessons, Changing Life Lessons that fellow U.S. Marines taught me after traumatic events occurred in my life, lessons that apply to anyone. Michael, you're a gentleman, a scholar, a patriot. I wish you the best with your book and with your organization. God bless you, sir. And amigos, we come back with your thoughts, your calls, your reactions, and so much more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
All right, amigos, we're coming back to you all, the American people. I want to get to the phones and get your thoughts and opinions on things. I also want to obviously share a couple other clips of audio with you. The ambassador, former ambassador, I'm not sure if he's ambassador anymore. I think he has a new job. But Ambassador Danny Danon today, cut number 20, he was talking about how he's reached his limit with the theater, political theater. Listen to this, cut number 20.
You come here asking for sympathy. You demand protection from this council while plotting the extermination of my people. It's enough. Enough with the performances. Enough with the theater. How can this council allow the representative of a regime that funds, arms, and orchestrates terror across the world to come here and play victim? It's like a wolf complaining when the shepherd fights back to protect his flock. So innocent. Mr. Iravani, please clarify to us. Do you support the destruction of Israel, a UN member state? Do you support the assassination of our elected leaders? If you do not, say so. We are all here, waiting. This council should put an end to this charade, once and for all. Mr. Iravani, you are not a victim. You are not even a diplomat. You are a wolf pretending to be a diplomat. And we are done pretending otherwise.
They're tired of it. They're tired of the lip service that they hear. And I'm tired of hearing of all of it. I have Middle East fatigue. I want everybody to stop killing each other. And I think you guys do too. I want to go back to talking about funny news, right? And really enjoying the headlines. But I understand the importance of, as H.W. Bush said, the world order. Right? I get it. And we have to get that under control, I guess is the word I'm looking for. The president was in Jersey today, Jersey in the building, and he reiterated that there would be hell to pay if Iran gets nukes because they are right on the cusp of it. He says that Iran would have a nuke in weeks. Listen to this.
And it looked like I'm right about the material that they've gathered already. It's a tremendous amount of material. And I think within a matter of weeks, or certainly within a matter of months, they're going to be able to have a nuclear weapon. We can't let that happen.
Now, the president didn't just stop there. He was taking questions from reporters. answering whether or not, and of course, and this is what I love, right? You got to love the media. Of course, they're supposed to ask the tough questions and speak truth to power and all this stuff that you lately you learn in journalism school. They don't tell you, tell the truth, tell it objectively, get to the bottom line. This is all about always challenging the status quo and pushing one ideological view over another. And of course, the question is about nuclear energy. You know, let's talk about nuclear energy. You're saying they can't have nuclear. You're saying they can't have nuclear energy? You know, I mean, it's ridiculous, honestly, to ask a question like that when you're facing an actual World War III nuclear war. But this is what the media, this is the incurious media, all of a sudden curious. Cut 4, check this out.
Would you support Iran being able to have civilian nuclear energy capabilities up to 3.76%?
You know, they're sitting on the top of one of the largest piles of oil in the world. I just don't know why they need that for civilian work. You know, it's one thing for certain countries to say, hey, I want to have a certain amount where I can go nuclear a little bit because we need it for electricity, we need it for air conditioners, etc. But when you're sitting on one of the largest oil piles anywhere in the world, it's a little bit hard to see why you need that.
And again, Trump doubling down on his 2-week deadline, which is the clock is already ticking, when asked if he would consider changing the date of his final date to make his decision. Check this one out.
The president to be that of a peacemaker? Do you worry that striking Iran would change that?
Always a peacemaker. That doesn't mean sometimes you need some toughness to make peace, but always a peacemaker.
Can you win in Iran without ground forces? Is an aerial campaign in Iran enough, or do you need ground forces?
Well, I'm not going to talk about ground forces. The last thing you want to do is ground forces.
Does Iran have 2 weeks, or could you strike before that? Are you essentially giving them a 2-week timeline?
I'm giving them a period of time. We're going to see what that period of time is, but I'm giving them a period of time, and I would say 2 weeks would be the maximum.
2 weeks is the maximum. And again, he's giving them time to come and negotiate. But guess what? The Iranians say, we do not want to negotiate. They say, we won't talk. Listen to this.
We are not seeking negotiations. It is the Americans who want talks. They've sent messages several times, very serious ones. But we made it explicitly clear to them that as long as this aggression and invasion continues, there's absolutely no room for talk or diplomacy. We are engaged in legitimate self-defense, and this defense will not stop under any circumstances. We have nothing to discuss with the United States, which is a partner in these crimes.
Well, there you go. That's the Iranian foreign minister today speaking through a translator. No negotiations. We won't talk. El Trompito and Bibi Netanyahu are war criminals. That's in effect what they're saying. I want to get your thoughts and reactions on all of that. The phone lines are open. If you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Friday night. We're live and national, 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and I'm looking forward to engaging in our late-night national town hall conversation with you all, we the people. So give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And former White House and federal government experts are saying that Iran may very well engage in a cyber attack against the United States and or Israel. We're going to get into that in a little bit. to see what the possibilities of that are. There's also some other news out there that I think is interesting. By the way, I've mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. Summer just kicked off at 10:42 p.m. Eastern Time. It's officially summer, as that's the beginning of the vernal equinox. So kudos to everybody who's enjoying summer. I know I had a nice day. I had dinner al fresco. It was very lovely. Anyway, the release of Mahmoud Khalil is causing a little bit of a stir. Federal judge signing an order to release him. He is the pro-Hamas activist that incited the riots at Columbia University that led to the kidnapping of the janitor from the Dominican Republic. And he was obviously then detained as a national security threat, and now a judge saying that this was not adequate to meet the foreign exception. Trump administration looking at other avenues like pursuing this through immigration court where they can just deport the guy. So very fluid situation. I'll keep you posted as anything happens. I don't think much will happen during the evening hours on that particular topic. And of course, in Israel, things continue as they've been. There's, of course, let's see. Let me just see what we've got here, because there is always news with Israel and Iran. But the latest is that everything continues, and the Iranians have publicly said on the record, we do not want to negotiate. They're not interested. So that's the story. New York Times reporting that they've been having conversations regarding trade with the European Union, and the talks have yielded no breakthrough. So that's that. Tulsi Gabbard, who recently was in the headlines, The Guardian is reporting, and I don't think The Guardian's the most reputable source, but they're reporting that she now backs President Trump's claim that Iran could have a nuclear weapon within weeks. And I'm pretty sure that is the result of very new, fresh intelligence, and that's why they're moving as swiftly as they are. And, of course, the debate continues, right? The debate continues over should the United States get involved. And moreover, I think the debate continues on should we be non-interventionists in the United States, or should we be more hawkish and focus on peace through strength and being able to back that up with the strength part. And I, for one, have always been more hawkish in my approach to everything, and foreign policy and all that. I support the military option, and I think it's just part of the natural order of things. To me, call me what you want, honestly, warmonger, neocon, whatever. I'll take all the labels. But the ultimate fact for me is I didn't grow up in a horrible neighborhood. I grew up in a very nice neighborhood in Midwood, Brooklyn. Spent some time in Flatbush, and it's a mixed bag, Brooklyn, right? You got all sorts of things. But you learn enough about the street. I moved to Jersey when I was 12. So I saw a few things. And oftentimes I just look at how the streets work. And when you look at the streets, you could sit here and say, I'm just not minding my own business. And a lot of people live their life that way, right? They'll walk down the street, and they'll see some dude arguing with his girl, and he smacks his girl, and they're like, I'm not getting involved. It's not my girl. He didn't smack my mother. He didn't smack my sister. I'm not getting involved. That's none of my business. And then you get some other dude that's walking down the street, sees that, and he's like, bro, you can't do that, bro. Why? Because he thinks that could be my mom. That could be my sister. And what kind of man would I be if I just looked the other way and said, I'm just minding my own business? And it's got nothing to do with me. Would you want somebody to do that with your mother or sister getting beaten in the street? So each of us has to make our choice on which man we're going to be. And that's the same thing when it comes to this foreign policy. There's a lot of people that wish America was in a bubble, that we had our massive military budget. I believe our military budget is 25 times larger than some obscene number of countries put together, of like 190 countries, of like half of them. And I might be wrong on that, but it's something close to that. And I bring that point up to say, if you are that guy, if you're the guy that's 6'6", built like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and you're walking down the street and somebody's, smacking up your sister, your mother, your grandmother, wouldn't you want that guy to tell, homie, hey, chill, bro. Don't do that. Not on my watch. Take a walk. Ma'am, are you okay? I would. I would want that guy to intervene on my daughter's behalf, on my wife's behalf. Now, I understand that this is more complicated than a simple dispute in the streets. I get that. But I want to reiterate that I don't know that either side is right or either side is wrong, is what I'm really trying to say. We all have our own opinions, and that's part of why I've been a conservative my entire adult political life, because I believe that it's okay to believe different things. I don't think that you're dead wrong if you don't agree with me. I think you have your opinions, and you're still a great patriot, and good for you. We can debate it, or we can go and share our ideas with other people, and whichever of us wins in the marketplace of ideas wins, right? And that's what I do on the radio every day. I share my thoughts, and we do what we do. It's not about convincing people. For me, it's more about making a presentation and giving you my side of the story. And then that's it. From there, you do what you do. So when you hear people saying, look, I want to put America first, I want to worry about the things going on here before we worry about that, those are all good statements, but they're platitudes, right? We have a military. The reason our military exists is not to take care of problems at home. That's not why it exists, right? It's, at least that's not why it exists today, right? The British were our colonizers, and it started from there. And we beat them in the Revolutionary War, and the rest is history. Now, whether or not we use our military might the right way can be argued for days, right? People could, if we use that intervention strategy during during, let's say, World War II, for example. Oh, they're doing all this stuff in Europe. All right, let them figure it out. That's their problem, We're not the Jewish state. Let them figure it out. We're not Russia. Let them figure it out. We could take that mind your business strategy. I just don't know that the mind your business strategy is the right strategy. My opinion. You can have whichever one you like. But one thing that we do know is that whichever strategy you like, the Iranians still hate us. They hate the Israelis, and they hate the Americans. They want to see us destroyed. They've alluded to destroying us with nuclear weapons for decades. They've been wreaking terror on everybody they can, but including Americans, including the hostages they took when I was a little kid. And they haven't stopped yet. Even at the point now where Trump is saying, hey, let's make a deal. Let's get this thing to end. Just stop the nuclear enrichment. They bypass that and they say, we're defending ourselves. You're attacking us. And I get that part too. But they could take a moment to say, President Trump, tell Netanyahu to hold his hand. Chill. Let's talk. And wait, even if they're going to use that time to regroup to do bad things. But they're not even saying that. They're just saying, hey, let's go for broke here. We're not talking. So tells me they're really just not interested in talking. We have to take them at their word and move to whatever the next level of this is. And that's it. And ultimately, that's how these things work. We live in a world where we try to avoid war, but war is a thing. We live in a world where we have commandments that tell us not to kill people, but killing is a thing. And that's the easiest way I can put it. So I want to talk about the threat that Iran poses to the United States. A lot of talk about a potential cyber attack on our country as part of retaliation from Iran. I want to know how realistic that threat is. And if so, what do we do? How do we mitigate? We're going to do all of that with Eric Cole, cybersecurity guru, coming up. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I'm so glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
everything's on the table right now as it relates to Iran, especially if they are running out of weaponry and missiles. They could resort to cyber incidents and cyber attacks. Even if it's not the Iranian government themselves, there are Iranian sympathizers around the world, and they're very good at rallying sort of cyber mercenaries for their cause. So we could see Iran strike everything from everyday citizens to US elected officials, media outlets, as well as critical infrastructure. They're going to look for something that might be high impact, very visible, and very inconvenient.
Very inconvenient indeed. That again, Teresa Payton, former White House Chief Information Officer, who's now the CEO of a cybersecurity firm, and taking her at her word that this may be a potential outcome, a potential fallout from this conflict with Israel and Iran, I want to bring in our own cybersecurity person. Eric Cole is a former CIA cybersecurity person, and he's the CEO of Secure Anchor. Secure-anchor.com is their website. Eric Cole, welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. So let's talk about this. I mean, obviously, you spent some time in the CIA and you've seen this stuff in action. What is the reality? I guess, if at all, you can give us an assessment on that, of what Iran could potentially do in the situation they're in. As I understand it, they're operating on generator power. They don't have active internet, and they're doing their best to launch a counteroffensive against the Israelis. If they're not in a position to launch a cyber attack on the U.S., who would they rely on? What does that scenario look like?
So really their only option, if they want any chance of winning in their minds, it has to turn into a cyber attack, because the Iranians, they don't have a lot of physical weaponry. Israel has already launched cyber attacks against them. We just saw in the last 3 to 4 days, Israel went in and attacked one of their largest cryptocurrencies, bankrupted. So Israel is trying to bankrupt the country. As you said, they're running on generators. They disconnected from the internet. Their only option and their only play is to launch a cyber attack. The question is, against who? Are they going to continue to go against Israel, or are they going to try to bring U.S. in? At this point, I think they're going to try to avoid it. But if the U.S. starts taking any action, which I'm concerned it looks like from the White House that's going to happen, my prediction is, unfortunately, there will be a cyber attack from Iran against the United States in the next 30 days.
Okay, now let's I guess war game that out. Let's just say that is the case. What does that look like? Do you think they're going to take the same angle that Israel took, trying to cripple our financial sector or potentially our energy grid? What do you think their angle would be?
They're definitely going to go after what we call soft targets. And the reason why we call them soft targets is because they rely on computers, but uptime and availability is the priority, not security. So when you look at infrastructure, electricity, transportation, finance, all of those systems are very reliable, but they're not very secure. Now, in the financial sector, we're much more secure, so I don't think they're going to go there. I think where they're going to target is our nuclear reactors for two reasons. One, they have the code. If you remember, I think it was 10, 12 years ago, remember Stuxnet, which was an attack, a coordinated attack that the U.S. launched against Israeli nuclear reactors. Well, guess what? They have the code. When you break into somebody's reactor with a vulnerability, they now have the exploit that they can use against us. So they have the exploit, they have the skills, and that could cause devastation because a large percent of our power could cause harm. And if you go in and attack a nuclear reactor, you can basically turn it into a nuclear bomb. So essentially, with cyber attack and exploits, we basically have given the Iranians a nuclear weapon.
Wow, very interesting. And let's what would be the contingency to that, or the way to mitigate that?
The number one mitigation, which I believe is happening now, is to disconnect all of our critical infrastructure from the internet. These systems were never designed to have internet connectivity. If you actually look back at a lot of the designs that we put together in the 90s and early 2000, we relied on things we call air gaps, which basically meant there was no connectivity to the internet. Unfortunately, with COVID and work from home and all the things over the last 5 years, a lot of these systems that should never have been connected to the internet started having internet connectivity. So the best thing we could do is learn from what Iran is doing, where they disconnected from the internet, and the United States, as quickly as possible, needs to disconnect all of our critical systems, reactors, infrastructure from the internet. It's going to cause potential functionality issues, but it's the only way to keep us secure at this point.
Folks, we're in conversation with Eric Cole, former CIA cybersecurity and current CEO at Secure Anchor. And Eric, this is all interesting stuff. If they don't, now I guess what would be the deterrent? Not just the mitigation, but the deterrent. President Trump making pretty strong threats against them, saying if Americans are harmed. Do you believe that if they were to do, and I heard your scenario, you're saying if the U.S. gets involved, they'll do that. But if the U.S. doesn't get involved and just continues to be on the sidelines cheering on Israel, then do you think that that's still the case? Do you think that they'll do this unprovoked?
So the wild card is rogue threat actors. So I don't think the Iranian government is going to launch a cyber attack against the United States unless we strike first.
Right.
But there's a lot of these rogue groups and people that are pro-Iran, anti-U.S., and unfortunately, to launch a cyber attack, you don't need a lot of money or a lot of power. You have 8 to 10 really smart people working for 3 to 4 years, and they can build these cyber weapons. So the bigger concern is, what if one of these rogue groups operating outside of the Iranian government decide to start targeting the U.S. because they just don't like us, and then they could potentially agitate and bring us into this.
Outstanding. Eric Cole, thank you for the analysis. I want you to stick with me for a couple more minutes. I have a couple of follow-up questions I'd like to get from you. Folks, we're coming back with Eric Cole. He's the CEO at Secure Anchor, former CIA cybersecurity analyst, and we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
You're educating America, and you are giving us an opportunity to speak freely. That's why I love this station, and I love your show.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company all night. And of course, we're going to get to your calls momentarily. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I want to come back to our conversation with Dr. Eric Cole. He served as a chief technology officer at McAfee and chief scientist at Lockheed Martin Corporation. He started as a CIA hacker, and he's the CEO of Secure Anchor. Now, Dr. Cole was explaining to us that he believes that if there is retaliation from Iran, it'll be as a result of the United States getting involved in the conflict, and they would go after soft targets that mess us up when they go down. I want to continue on that thread of the conversation with a couple of follow-up questions. Dr. Cole, welcome back. I want to get your take on what other avenue or angle they might potentially take if there is a cyber attack, and is there an opportunity for them to try to defend themselves against the Israelis by using a cyber attack on their infrastructure as they're in theater in war?
So 2 great questions. So first, the attack, we're focusing on big targets, but what we see in cybersecurity a lot, and I think is a tool in the Iranians' toolbox, is what we call death by 1,000 cuts, which is instead of going after critical infrastructure, what if they went after individual citizens? You actually saw today, and right now there's no relationship between them, but we saw billions of passwords compromised, and it wasn't because Google, Amazon, and others got compromised. It was because individual devices were actually targeted. So what if Iran has already gone in and infected apps or target individual phones, if they go in and compromise millions of Americans' personal devices, that could have the same devastating effect. So we're sitting here watching, thinking it's going to be large government, but every one of us listening to this show have to realize maybe they're going to target the individual because unfortunately we're the most vulnerable. And then to your second question, yeah, I think Iran is going to take a play out of the Ukraine playbook. One of the things the Ukrainians did that was so devastating to the Russians is they took control of their drones. Russia has better technology, better drones, and Russia started sending drones into Ukraine, and instead of targeting with missiles, the Ukrainians hacked the drones and turned them against the Russians. So I think you're going to see Iran try to go after Israel and target their own systems and use them against them.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, that approach. Now, based on your expertise and everything that you've done in your career, what is the possibility or the capability, your assessment of the capability of the Iranians and their cyber, hacking capability?
They are one of the best. When you look at physical weaponry, we put them pretty low on the list. But when you look at cyber warfare, we consider them one of the top four. So the top four players, the first two you can probably guess, China and Russia.
Right.
The third and fourth are probably a little shocking to people, is North Korea and Iran. They are very smart. North Korea and Iran both recognize that their ability to build physical weapons of mass destruction was very limited. They were monitored. You can monitor uranium, very hard for them to do, very expensive. So for the last 5 to 10 years, both countries have been investing very heavily in cyber warfare, cyber technology, training their people on the best methods and means. So unfortunately, they don't have a big nuclear stockpile, but Iran has a very large cyber nuclear stockpile of weapons they could launch against us or Israel.
Fascinating. Now, Dr. Eric Cole, for people that are interested in the conversation we're having and want to hear more about your work and what you do and how to follow you, where do they go?
They can go to drericcole.com, DRERICCOLE.com, or on Amazon. I have 8 books, but two books that are not technical that are meant for broad audience is Online Danger and Cyber Crisis. So if you just go to Amazon.com and put in Dr. Eric Cole or Online Danger or Cyber Crisis, you can get books. I also have podcasts, and I give a lot of free resources away on YouTube.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to having you back on as this develops and as your time permits, because I think it's a fascinating topic. And as you know, I've always say so much of this is a battle for information, a war for the truth. And this is the latest vehicle that I think a lot of people are using. And like you said, it doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take uranium enrichment to launch an attack on one's cyber infrastructure. Dr. Cole, I want to thank you for being here. Thanks for your time, and I appreciate your expertise.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me.
You bet. Godspeed. And amigos, your thoughts, calls, and reaction are coming up. California, Idaho, Florida. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So there's a non-lib girl on the social media named Erin Wexler. She's a social media influencer, and she put together a great little report on this study that came out that showed that people whose politics are further to the right are actually happier as people. Listen to this.
Everybody knows, even the left, especially the left, they know that conservatives are happier. And now there is a new study by the famous Nate Silver that shows that among all the factors in your life, your politics are not just highly predictive, they are the most predictive. Look at this scale. The further to the right on the scale means that you're happier. And it turns out when you're further to the right in your politics, you'll be further to the right in this chart, in every category. I mean, every single category, religion, sexuality, you name it. One of the most outrageous parts of the results is that conservatives who make less than $30,000 a year are as happy as liberals who make over $100,000. The poorest conservatives are happier than the wealthiest liberals. But I mean, this isn't surprising. And by the way, can I point out that the people with the most political engagement actually rank as some of the highest in happiness, okay? So you're all welcome for the content.
That's Aaron Wexler, and great job she did there. And I think this is an interesting take, one that's probably true, and, you know, by and large. And I want to get into this with you all, the American people. I'll tell you something that makes me happy is the ability to talk to people in California, in Vermont, that spills over into Canada, in Illinois, Chicagoland area, in the middle of the country, Idaho, Florida. We've got stations throughout California, stations in Oregon, stations in New York. And it's always really just it's a blessing to me to be able to speak with so many Americans during a live broadcast, because who else has an opportunity like this, right? Unless you're in this business that I'm in. It's a unique opportunity to get the opinions and thoughts of people, like especially when my buddy calls in, right? My buddy Jerome and all the other lefties that like to call this program to, you know, to argue with me. But either way, it gives me a sense of what people are thinking. So I love that, and that's part of what makes me happy. But I want to know what you guys think about what's going on with diplomacy, what's going on with Iran, what's going on with President Trump's administration, and everything we've talked about tonight, cybersecurity as well. Let's go to California, San Jose, California, KSFO. Let's talk to Jacob. Jacob, what's on your mind?
Yes, Rich, regarding the rush to get into a war with Iran, Senator Tim Kaine from Virginia, he filed with the U.S. Senate a War Powers resolution on Monday, June 16th, that has privileged processing. It should have been referred, according to my information, to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. But artificial intelligence searches have shown that there's no relevant information that it's been received by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. They're supposed to get it, have it for 10 days, maybe make a report, and then send it to the full Senate for debate and voting. But what's the problem here? So do you know anything?
Let me just chime in here. I don't know if there is a problem here. I know that legislation is a slow-moving process. And I love it. I love that, you know, people are thinking outside the box and saying, I don't like this, and I'm going to try and make a law against it. I'm going to cause some debate on the Senate floor. This is what we do, right? This is what America is. So I think all of that's good stuff. June 16th was 4 days ago. I don't know many laws that get moved through committee or, you know, anywhere in 4 days. I think you got staffers that have to read them, and then they go to more senior staff in the congressional office, and then they go to the member to read and mull over. And, of course, they've got to take it to the subcommittee chair, committee chairs, see if they can get it into committee, out of committee. So there's a lot of steps that are involved when it's a major piece of legislation, like, let's say, the Big Beautiful Bill or something like that, you know, has a significant push behind it coming from the White House or elsewhere. Then you know, that may help more people to get on board and pull in the same direction at the same time. But I think it's a good thing that they're if they don't agree and they think that there's a rush to get into war. I think President Trump is showing a lot of restraint. I think, you know, in real life, imagine somebody, you know, threatening your closest ally, you know, at work, your closest ally in anything. And you think, man, if I don't stick up for my closest ally, they may not stick up for me, right? And that's the reality of life. And you go, and you know what? I'm going to take 2 weeks. I'm going to give you 2 weeks to try to figure this out. And, you know, I think that's an incredibly judicious and wise time to pause. One that likely I wouldn't have done. I think, and I don't think it's wrong. I just think President Trump shows a lot more wisdom than I when making these types of decisions. To really do the right thing and not get into something. I don't think Trump woke up one day and said his 50, 60 years of being on the record opposing every single war has changed. I think he's just the commander-in-chief, has a responsibility, and realizes that when you're leader of the free world, you're just that. So I think he's weighing all of the options. and hoping that the pressure is sufficient between Iran and Israel to get both of them to go where they got to go to get this thing done without any additional pressure being applied by the United States. Benjamin Netanyahu saying that Iran is more than capable of taking out these nuclear facilities. So we're going to see how it progresses. I, for one, am on the other side of that debate, where I think if we have a chance to take it out, why not take it out? That's what we're here for. You know, it's like having a big brother with a lot of muscles, and you get into a fight and you don't call him. I say, hey, I'm calling my brother. Even if he just has to stand there and watch, you know, make sure nobody jumps in. So those are my thoughts. Jacob, San Jose, California, KSFO, great station, by the way. Thank you for your call. Let us continue. Let's go to Lester, Daytona Beach, Florida, WNDB. Lester, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Thank you, Rich. I'm calling to ask if there is a remote possibility that Tulsi Gabbard has become problematic for Team Trump.
Yeah, well, I don't think Trump is a king, number one. And number two, I think there's always a possibility anybody could be problematic. But I think a better way of phrasing this would be there is a reality that in life, especially in politics, you're not always going to agree. And in fact, it's a good thing when you don't agree. Now, a lot of people have taken exception to Tulsi Gabbard. I myself was one that took exception to her early on and thought, why on earth are we applauding the person that was a DNC vice chair, the person that, you know, left that position at the Democrat National Committee, being vice chair, to go and work on the Bernie Sanders campaign? How do you go from Bernie Sanders politics to America First, MAGA? But I had an opportunity to speak with Tulsi Gabbard. She was a guest on this program and explained some of her evolution. And the reality was Hillary Clinton put her through the meat grinder. And that's something that we've seen the Democrats do to Trump. We've seen them do it to many people. And I think that's all it takes for some people to realize, wow, they're not really my friends. And her, you know, change her mind on many things. Now, I don't think that, you know, she becomes a MAGA conservative overnight, but I think she's in agreement with the president. I think her military background, her congressional background, her political background all lend themselves well to the position she has as Director of National Intelligence. I think she's capable of doing the job. I think she's loyal to the president, even if she doesn't agree. Now, I've heard the comments of others on this program that say that, you know, some of the people she's hiring are I don't want to say proverbial or habitual or serial leakers, but leakers nonetheless, right, is the allegation that was going around. And again, I don't have firsthand knowledge of that, so I really couldn't get into it. But I would say anybody with an issue, right? If you listen to this program for any amount of time, you may have remembered when there was an issue with National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. And at the time, I said, oh, boy, this leak issue and whatnot, all of these things are going to be a thing, and somebody's head will roll. And eventually you saw heads rolling here, heads rolling there, up to and including Mike Waltz saying, I'm out of here. So plenty of things are real. That, you know, it doesn't mean that you can become a problem for the administration or even appear to be a problem without being an enemy, without being a persona non grata, but just somebody who might be attracting too much heat and want to step aside. In those terms, I don't think she's that, and I don't think she's being disloyal. I think she's, like many, dealing with a lot in Washington, and sometimes might have her hands very, very full. And that's my, wait and see approach to what's going on. But thank you for your call. I appreciate it, brother. I'm going to take a pause right here. We're going to come back to calls from Canada, Illinois, Idaho, and more. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez, and we're hitting the phones. I want to go to Timmy, Akron, Ohio, WNIR. Timmy, what's on your mind?
Hi. I was just saying, like you were saying about the media doing their job to push back on the narrative. No one pushes back on the narrative because the Zionist controlled and owned media won't let you. The real narrative is that Iran wants a nuclear weapon because Israel has nukes. You want to get nukes out the Middle East, you're going to have to get rid of Israel's nukes. Until Israel gets rid of their nukes, everybody's going to want one.
I mean, that's nice that you say that, but the real issue is you've got Iran saying the exact opposite. Iran is saying we want this nuclear weapon so that we can destroy Israel and not have them exist in the Middle East. They're not saying what you're saying. They're not saying, hey, look, we're just trying to have, you got a gun, I want to have a gun too. You got nukes, I want nukes too. If they were saying that, they would gain sympathy in the world. But they're not saying that. They're saying we want to destroy the little Satan and hopefully get an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile, so that we can destroy the great Satan. And these are the same people that open up their parliamentary session, and we do it in America with a prayer, and they do it there with a chant of death to America and death to Israel. When you have someone like that bombs everybody indiscriminately, today they bombed a mosque in Israel. I can't imagine giving someone like that a nuclear weapon. Is that what you're advocating for?
What I'm advocating for is that the American position will be much more pliable and people would agree a lot more if no nukes were in the Middle East.
I don't know if I would agree with that. I think Israel absolutely needs a nuke. Israel is this bastion of Zionism and Jews in the middle of a bunch of Arab states at different times they've had a serious conflict with. I would think they would need the maximum type of protection. Why wouldn't they?
Okay, Israel is not a democracy, and it's an ethno state. Okay,
well, why is Israel not a democracy? Don't they have elections?
Yeah,
All
but
right.
can you be an Israeli without being a Muslim? I mean, without being a Jew? Can I immigrate to Israel without being a Jew?
Yes, of course you can. You can. Why would you say that? That's not even true. There's plenty of Arab Israelis. Their Knesset, their Congress is made. They have an entire Arab caucus. Those are Israeli Arabs. There's plenty of them.
Right now,
well, we're talking right now. I'm talking to you right now. And Timmy, you're chopping up and the music's playing. I don't think you got all your facts right. It sounds like you just want to hate the Jews because somebody told you to hate the Jews. But I just don't hate the Jews. Timmy in Akron, Ohio, thanks for the call. Ruben in Amarillo, Texas, shout out to you. Tony in Montreal, Tim in Marion, WGGH, WMVT, KLIF. Amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care. God bless you, and good night, America. I'm Rich Valdez.